Yo, I'm back again. I think I'm gonna start doing an episode every Tuesday. I still don't have an intro or a theme song, I'm so sorry. But today I thought it might be interesting to talk about grocery store disruptions. Because I just did 2 of them the other day, and it was loads of fun. And, why on earth would animal rights people, those crazy-ass mofos, storm into a grocery store and start, speaking into a megaphone and holding signs and TVs of slaughter footage? What are those crazy people doing? Well, I thought I might get into what a grocery store disruption is, and why us animal rights vegan people are doing it, and what our intention for doing it is, and also how to do them, because literally anybody could do them. You can do them even if you're by yourself. And I also want to talk about a couple of things that you can do while you yourself are just shopping to kind of do activism, but in a way that's, I don't know if passive is the right word, but we'll go with passive for right now, in a way that you can still get a little message in, just while you're shopping, So what are animal rights grocery store disruptions? Well, they're a form of civil disobedience. And what is civil disobedience? Well, just the most well-known examples of this would be the sit-ins during the civil rights movement in America. Rosa Parks not getting off the bus, black people sitting in at lunch counters where black people weren't allowed to sit in. So it's civil disobedience. It's just a peaceful way of saying, these laws are wrong and, good people break bad laws. It's saying, not only are these laws wrong and immoral and have a victim that suffers from them, but we believe that they should not be normal and they should not be treated as normal to the point where we need to be disrupting them. I'm just going to make this disclaimer because there's always these people that are going to think that I'm comparing slaves or black people or humans in general to animals, or the struggles of human rights to animal rights. I'm not comparing them. Just making that disclaimer, not in any way, shape, or form. Just comparing the methods used in each different movement. I hope that fucking makes sense. Ugh. I believe, and so do all of my vegan friends and people I've done activism with, that all forms of discrimination are wrong. That includes racism, sexism, anti-LGBT. My cat is doing something really funny over there. Sorry, I have ADD. He's got a rag in his claws, and he's holding it with his front feet, and he's kicking the rag with his 2 back feet. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, ADD. ADD is a fun thing to live with. Let me know if you ever want me to talk about that. But if you do still feel why are these people speaking up for animals when there's so many human rights issues going on in the world? I would love it if you just went over to YouTube just real quick and typed in human rights activist disrupts vegan activist event, or it's something along those lines. It should come right up. It's by Earthling Ed, and it's basically where this man goes up to a vegan animal rights protest event, and he starts talking to them with a microphone or whatever, and starts saying what about my struggles, and why are you speaking up for animals and not humans? And I think that the way Earthling Ed addresses him and talks to him and answers that is very enlightening. And basically his main point that he says to the human rights guy is, we're trying to teach people not to discriminate against animals, and if they're not discriminating against animals from the moment they're a kid, if they don't even discriminate against a chicken, they're definitely not going to discriminate against people. It increases their compassion to where it's out of the question to discriminate against people for being a different color or a different sexual orientation if you're not even discriminating against animals who are much more different from us than that, if that makes sense. But yeah, that's a really good video to check out. And the other thing too, of course, is that being a vegan and being a vegan activist doesn't stop you from caring about human rights and for doing human rights activism. If anything, you'll just have more energy, because hell, we always have more energy on a vegan diet, so you'll just probably have more energy to protest than you ever did before on several different issues. There's a lot less people speaking out for animal rights than for other issues, so that's just why I personally feel so called to really hone in on and focus on animal rights. Another reason why I feel so called to focus on animal rights is because there is a clear-cut solution. With a lot of these other things, say human trafficking, for example, you can donate to groups like Thorn and stuff. But there's not something that you can do with your own daily action, that I'm aware of at least, to stop and help end human trafficking besides maybe spreading awareness of it. It's not like it's really in your control. Like, there's not something you can directly do to stop it. And maybe I'm wrong. You can feel free to correct me. But when it comes to animal rights, there is absolutely something that you can directly do with your daily lifestyle and just the things that you do day to day to boycott and stop these horrible animal agriculture industries. And it's just as simple as switching from the cow titty milk to the oat milk. So yeah, I like it when there's a clear-cut solution. I like doing this kind of activism because I'm presenting a solution. I'm not just like talking about stuff, but I'm saying like, here's what to do to not support that. But anyway, I think I'm getting off a little bit on a tangent here, so let's swing it back around to grocery store disruptions. Whether or not animals even have rights depends a lot on just consumers buying food products. I know there's also like makeup, animal testing on that, hygiene products, animal testing can be on that. You gotta avoid that and stuff. And you of course gotta avoid fur and leather. But the main bulk of like whether or not animals have rights is decided on food, just because all of us are buying food enough to eat something like 3 times a day on average, which means that 3 times a day we're deciding whether we believe animals should have rights or not. And when I say rights, I don't mean like animals having the same rights as a human to like go buy a house and shit. Obviously, I mean that should be clear, but the rights that we're talking about is literally just simply the right to not be killed, the right to not be mutilated, tortured, abused, artificially inseminated against their will, bred, all of that stuff. Basically, the right to their own bodily autonomy and the right to not fucking be killed. Like, it's just the most basic right that, like, a living being can be granted. These decisions are made in the grocery store. They're also made in restaurants and stuff. And real quick, I just want to mention, you don't have to give up all makeup or all hygiene products or all like leather and fur. There's a vegan version of all of those things. For hygiene products and makeup, make sure it's vegan ingredients and cruelty-free. You have to have both, because a lot of times there's one and not the other. Faux leather, I think faux fur, everyone knows that that's around and that exists. So anyway, moving forward. When you walk into a supermarket and you're stressed out because of, our society's lifestyles that are pushed on us of overworking and then having the kids and having all the social obligations and stuff, you're stressed out, you just want to get in and out of that store fast. And you go up and you buy the star-shaped chicken nuggets for your kid or whatever, and there's no indication to either you or the kid, no thought process actually, that little item that's shaped like a star or a dinosaur or whatever used to be a living, breathing animal that suffered and also died a horrible, violent death and struggled against that and didn't want to die. There's no indication on the packaging in the store. It's just not in people's thought processes. It's like people are just zombies walking around, picking up the neatly packaged, quote, meat. It's a dead animal, but they call it meat because people don't want to be reminded that it's a dead animal that didn't want to die. If you didn't know, meat is turning all gray and shit before it hits the shelf because it's rotting flesh. That's kind of what rotting flesh does. It turns gray. Not very appetizing. They inject it with food, like red food coloring for this reason. They also inject it with sodium to pump it up, especially if it's chicken. But either way, there's no way that people going up to the meat aisle or wherever it is, picking up a frozen burrito that has chopped up dead animals in it, there's no way that there's any point in their thought process that they're like, this was a dead animal that wanted to live, or any like imagery in their brain of how that animal died or how that animal was even raised. It's just not a thought process because it's made so secret. The industries hide how these animals are raised and killed, and they prosecute activists that try to show it. They don't show it in the fucking McDonald's and restaurant and grocery store ads. That's for fuck's sure, because no one would want to buy the things then if they actually showed how the animals were killed, especially children who still have compassion and aren't just numb to everything in life like a lot of the adults are. It's just not a thought process that happens. You're just in there getting food and getting out and trying to get back to your stressful ass life and not ask questions about anything. It's basically how it is. That way you don't feel like picking up these products has any consequence. And furthermore, you've been taught all your life that you need these things for health, that you can't even imagine life without these things. So what we're here to do with our disruptions is literally to just cause you to think. Because you're not thinking. You're not thinking. Because if you were to think about this for more than like 5 minutes, maybe even less than 5 minutes. Sorry, I live on a busy road. There's some probably traffic noises. But if you were to think about this and just even the logic of it, that's a animal body part from an animal who didn't want to die, and we don't need to be eating it, and you wouldn't watch how it's made, and you wouldn't want to kill the animal yourself. Like, basically, if you were to just think things through a little bit, you'd come to the conclusion, at the very least, that it's not a very logical thing to do to eat animals. So that's it, really. We're just causing people to think about it. Instead of just being zombies and going to the store and seeing the quote meat sitting there and being like, oh, that's food. I go to a store and I buy food. Instead of just being like that, you have these people shouting and holding signs and showing footage and stuff, and you're forced to think about it now. I know I'm sound like I'm being an asshole and just saying all non-vegans are stupid, but like I used to be a non-vegan and I sure as fuck wasn't thinking about the animals when I was buying things at the grocery store in my college days and whatnot. I was just like, I have an exam and I need to buy whatever is like the easiest shit to make, and that's how a lot of people are. And it's really not their fault. A lot of people just don't know. They've never talked to an animal rights person. I feel like a lot of people have seen slaughter footage, but they've seen it under the premise that like, oh, that's sad and that's not fun to watch, but it's an unnecessary evil because we need it for protein or we need it for health. Like, I saw a couple clips of slaughter footage on YouTube when I was a kid, and I was just like, oh, this is sad, this is terrible, I don't want anything to do with this. But, like, I didn't understand that I didn't have to eat these products. I just thought, like, wow, the world's fucked up. You know what I mean? Like, that whole, like, hey, you don't have to pay for this thing wasn't something that my 10-year-old brain could comprehend. And people use all kinds of justifications, if they do happen to think about it at all. Like back in the day, only a few years ago, I have to stay humble, this was only a few years ago, but I would be eating a meat or buying a meat product, and I would think to myself, like, well, an animal had to die for this. Not that I had, like, seen any footage or learned about, the full extent of how cruel the industries are, but I knew that, like, obviously an animal had to die for this piece of flesh to get to me. But I justified it literally by saying, like, well, it's sitting there on the shelf. The animal already was killed. And if I don't, like, buy it and eat it, that means the animal died for nothing. And really, I'm doing a good thing because I'm just preventing it from going to waste. Even though I'd been in economics class and learned how supply and demand works, like, all of that logic just went out the window because I was just trying to morally justify eating animal products. And that happens to pretty much everyone. It happens to the most intelligent people. So I don't want to come off as if I'm, like, making fun of every non-vegan, saying that they're, like, stupid or whatever. Some of the most intelligent people, like even scholars, when they start being asked about veganism, they will make these really just leaps of mental gymnastics and just weird false justifications to justify it, because I don't know, people just lose their minds because we know kind of that it's wrong, and we're willing to make justifications that we wouldn't be willing to make in other situations so that we don't have to start changing what we eat. It goes back to that, like, we're all in a rat race. We're all just struggling to live and survive and earn our way, and we just want to get through, and we don't want to think about our food. We just want to quickly buy it and be efficient and not take too much time on it. And that's a huge part of all of this. I think if we weren't all living these lifestyles, we would be slowing down, and we would be able to be like, hey, like, why do we eat meat? I don't know. But if you are someone who thinks, like, oh, the animal's already dead, like, I'm buying it so that they don't go to waste, like, that's a huge justification I used to use. Then yeah, supply and demand. Like, those products are only on the shelf because people are buying them. If everyone stopped buying them, the farmers would stop producing them. It's really just that simple. For every time that you purchase a dead animal's flesh, yes, that animal is already dead. But by purchasing it and by paying for it, you are saying, I am okay with what you did to this animal, and please do it again, because that product you took off the shelf has to be replaced by another animal's life, another animal's suffering. And that's just the part that was not in my brain when I was trying to use the, oh, they're already dead, it'll go to waste if I don't eat it, if I don't buy it justification. It's just a very completely flawed justification. So again, our goal is to cause people to think, because people are not fucking thinking. They're just not. And what people do after they think is just really entirely based on them and where they're at in life and their character as a human being and their level of empathy and compassion, and whether or not they choose to go do their own research about what we're saying. So I'm just going to describe now how the grocery store disruptions that I've done so far have kind of gone down, like just start to finish, what we do, how we plan them, and all of that. Anyone can plan and lead a grocery store disruption, and I mean anyone, even you really shy, really self-conscious, unconfident people. I am one of you, okay? And I haven't personally planned and led my own disruption yet, but I am going to, and once I do, I'm going to talk about it on this podcast, mark my word. I've only attended like 4 or 5 disruptions, so I do recommend going to other people's disruptions if that's possible for you in your area to get a feel for it before you try to like lead your own. But then again, like if you just watch some videos online and see how it's done, you could probably still get enough of a feel for it. So the best way to probably plan a disruption is through social media, like make a Facebook event and invite people. I think you're supposed to make the event private though, and make the event private so that law enforcement and stuff are not onto you, like knowing that you're gonna be there before you get there type of thing. Have an address of a location for you and the other people to meet at, which is close to the grocery store you're disrupting, like within walking distance, but not actually meeting at the place. I mean, you can all meet in the parking lot of the grocery store. You could still make that work, but the reason that like my groups meet at like a store parking lot nearby that's not the grocery store we're disrupting is so that we can assemble and get our signs and start latching the TVs on the people wearing the TVs if we have those, and just talking over what we're going to do, what the plan is, before we actually go in. Because if you see a big giant group of people doing that in the parking lot of the grocery store, like people are going to start wondering what the hell is going on. Like maybe a manager will come out and be like, what are you people doing? And then they won't even let you in, and then that's like, I wouldn't say a fail, but like kind of a fail. The other thing is, if you're speaking in a megaphone, it's good to, you don't have to like write down a speech, but prepare a little bit and just practice the general thing of what you're gonna say, because you're not gonna be in the grocery store for very long. Like all of my disruptions from start to finish, walking in to walking out to the car again, have been like on average 7 or 8 minutes, which means you're only like standing in the grocery store speaking for like 2 or 3 minutes max, maybe. So it has to be like a short speech. And I guess that depends on where you are, because I've seen other disruptions in other places like the UK where the store managers and cops aren't as bothered, I guess, and they won't try so hard to kind of antagonize you and get you out. I think it probably varies place by place, but just for me and my experience living in the US, yeah, it's about a 7 or 8 minute average, which means if you are speaking, it's probably only planned to speak for like 2 minutes. Because every time I have done a disruption, the cops have gotten called. And sometimes we do interact with the cops, but a lot of the times we get out of there before the cops even arrive. And you just want to be organized and walk into the store in a line with someone leading you. And it's important that the person leading has been inside the store before and knows where the meat section or the dairy section or whatever section you're targeting. Usually we do like the deli or the meat aisle. It's important for the person leading the line of people into the store to know exactly where they're going so that they can efficiently get the line of people to that section. And you want to move quickly and just get in there and like get into place. And when you're walking in, you want to not try and draw too much attention to yourself. And also don't be an asshole. It's not like you're going in the store being like, move it, old lady, and like knocking her over. And it's not like that. Like, say excuse me, be polite. Just, try and still be quick. And don't like hold your signs up while you're walking to the meat area or whatever area, because you don't want to draw too much attention to yourself while you're walking in the store, because if you do, then managers and workers can already be like walkie-talkieing each other, like telling each other to go call the cops and stuff. So you want to get in there as quickly as possible. And then it's good to wait till everyone's there. Once everyone is already in the area, you can say like signs up, and then people will start showing their signs, start showing the TV and everything. And then the person speaking, if there is one, there doesn't have to be a megaphone. It can just be people being silent. There's a lot of different ways to do this. I've seen people just go in a group with an acoustic guitar and just literally sing like a vegan song in front of the meet. That would take like a lot more planning and stuff because you'd all have to like learn the song and stuff, but that's like a really freaking cool way that I want to try one day to do it. I've also seen people go in completely silent with like tape over their mouth to represent like animals not being able to speak up for their own justice or things like that. I've done a disruption where it was funeral themed, where we all wore black. We walked in with photos of animals that have been killed that we've taken at vigils from the slaughter trucks, and had like roses and set roses down on the dead bodies in the grocery store. That was a really effective and cool way to do it. There's like, get creative. Like on Halloween, I've seen people go into the grocery store covered in blood being like, watch the scariest movie there is called Dominion. And of course these Thanksgiving and Christmas themed ones, I just did a Christmas one. You can do a speech about like, don't talk about peace and love when there's a dead animal on your plate, kind of a thing. Not exactly like that, but that being the theme. So what will happen like really quickly as soon as someone starts speaking in a megaphone or doing whatever it is, like really quickly a store manager will be there telling you to get out, this is private property and all that. Some of them, in fact probably most of them that I've experienced so far, have tried to intimidate certain people in our group, or get really aggressive with us. And our intention is just to come here with a peaceful message and just speak and hold signs. And we're not here to hurt anyone. We're not here to incite violence. We're not here to like start fist fights or anything like that. But even though we do come with those intentions, sometimes store managers will really like lose their cool and take it out on us, if that makes sense. And we don't really have control over that. But nothing like unsafe has happened. It's mostly just the managers getting really angry and getting up in people's personal space and trying to knock signs out of people's hands. It's mostly been like that, which if they touch you while you're in there, that is assault. And if you're filming them and you say like, you can't touch me, that's assault, like they're more than likely gonna stop trying to intimidate you and stop trying to, because no one wants to catch a case basically over a protester in the grocery store. So there's really nothing to be scared of though, especially if you know your rights. Like if the police do make it in before you are able to get out and they ask like who's in charge, you can say no one is in charge. You don't have to give any name. In fact, that's what we always do, is we say no one's in charge. And then if they ask for your name and information, you're not being arrested, so you don't have to give them your name and information. You can just say like, I don't have to give you that information. I'm heading out now. And yeah, I mean, most cops, they have more important shit to do. They understand that we're not of any threat. We're not dangerous. We're just speaking. And the reason they show up is mostly just because the managers are like, their ego is bruised. They're personally offended and upset that someone's in their store doing this, and they're usually meat eaters, so they're also more than likely personally upset and offended by the message that we're trying to say about animal rights as well. Just be prepared and be smart about it. Don't go to like grocery stores that are in areas of like super high crime or something where you think something could break out. Like, be smart about it. And I've been to disruptions where we kind of like stay as long as we possibly can, and then we walk out slowly to like further make a point. But if you do choose to go that route, like just know that you will interact with a cop. But the route that we've been going lately is just getting out of there quickly before the cop comes. So just, after they're called, being like, okay, let's go everyone, and then tell the store people if they're still like, leave, you gotta get out of here, this is private property. By the way, legally, like, as long as you leave once they tell you to, you're not like breaking any laws, if that makes sense. Like, about being on private property and whatnot. As long as you leave when they tell you to, like, you're good. There's nothing you can be in trouble for. So basically we leave after a couple minutes. It's such a short period of time, really. And you just walk out, and we like to do chants on our way out so that we're still like making noise and being loud. And an example of a chant would be like someone says, "Humane slaughter is a lie," and then everyone else chants, "Animals do not want to die." Just simple things that are easy to memorize. And like our or their milk, and then everyone else chants, "Not ours." Their eggs, everyone else chants, "Not ours." Their bodies, "Not ours." Things like that. And the cool thing is that, you know, some customers will just act like they don't see or hear you. They'll act like you don't exist, because that's probably the easiest thing to do. I mean, you're being confronted with a really difficult message, and, you know, it's the ostrich effect. It's what a lot of people do. They just look away. They just are, I mean, people are also so desensitized, too, that they're just like, oh, whatever, and they just, I swear some people are just flat out zombies going through the motions. But so a lot of people will just like flat out not even be willing to make eye contact with you. But probably more of the people will stop and listen, and most of them will also be recording on their phones, which is great, because you know that even if they don't post it on their social media, they'll at least be showing it like at least one other person. So that means we're extending the message to potentially a lot more people if they share it on their social medias and stuff. And even if they're like, oh, look at these crazy animal rights people, like, they can be just like making fun of us, but, you know, as they say, the first stage of truth is mockery. It's an uncomfortable message that they're being confronted with, so it's human nature a lot of times to laugh out of that discomfort. But even if they are just like sharing it, being like, oh, these crazy people, ha ha ha, they're still sharing the message, and that is the goal here. And they're still thinking about something that they otherwise wouldn't have thought about, and that's really the goal. And yeah, we're here, we're loud, we're making a point. Like, eating animals is normalized violence, and it shouldn't be normal anymore. It should be frowned upon. You should be made uncomfortable. You should be confronted with how the animals are treated. And yeah. So at this point, we all walk out, we do our chants, and then once we're in the parking lot, you don't have to like literally run, but you want to like be pretty quick and have it memorized where you parked, and get to your car quickly and get like drive out of there immediately. A lot of the times, like when we're driving out and pulling out of the grocery store place is when we see the cop pulling into the parking lot. So most of the time the cop shows up to the store and we're already all gone, and then the cop's like, thanks for wasting my time. And yeah, then we're out of there, and we usually meet back in the location that we met when we were planning things, which would be, I forgot to mention that, like, you meet in a location to plan things, and then you sometimes go closer, or sometimes you stay in the same location. It really depends. But you meet in, or you can meet in a different location. A lot of times we just say, okay, we'll have a group text, and someone will say, okay, let's meet in blah, blah, blah location, or we'll have it pre-planned, and then we'll all meet there. We'll be like, okay, cool, everyone, what went well, what didn't go well, and then from there, we'll, you know, either go home or we'll get ready to do another disruption at a different store. And it's a good idea if you do multiple disruptions in a day with your group, that you do another store that's in a different, like, you know how police are in a county or whatever, do a disruption in a store that's got a different police county, so that it's not like the same police, because you don't want the same police chilling in the area looking for you to do more disruptions. You want to, if that makes sense, you don't want to be caught basically before you even walk into the next store because they're in the area looking for you, kind of a thing. And again, interacting with the police, there's nothing to be afraid of. Like, they do a lot of hardcore shit in their job. They understand that people saying a speech at a grocery store or holding a sign, that's not like a threat or anything. They're not, in my experience, going to take that very seriously. They're more just annoyed that they're called for this. And yeah, just know your rights. You don't have to give your name. We have had an instance where we went back to our car and then a cop came up and blocked our car from being able to leave the parking lot, and that was a little scary. That was a little like, oh shit, are we fucked? But if you just talk to the cop and, say like, am I being arrested? They'll say no. And then you say like, okay, well, you need to move your car then so I can leave. Basically, that's all we had to do. And then they did move their car and then we left. And again, you don't have to give your name. You don't have to give information. But even if you did give your name and information, it's not like this is something that's going to go on your record and ruin your life or something like that. So there's really nothing to be afraid of. But it does take a little bit of bravery. It is a little bit of an adrenaline rush. So this kind of activism may not be for everyone. It's just something to keep in mind and consider if it's right for you or not. And there's so many different ways to do activism. You don't have to do disruptions, but I just love them. I think they're fun. I think they're effective. Sometimes they can make news articles. Not that I'm aware of any of ours making news articles, but I've seen other people's disruptions make news articles, which is even better because then you're even getting the message out to more people. Okay, so before I move on to other things that you can do as little forms of activism here and there when you are just personally grocery shopping, I want to just mention that it's a really good idea to film your disruptions for a few reasons. One, obviously, you can put it on social media and it can get shared to get the message out there, obviously. And another thing is so that you can watch it back and see what went well, what didn't. Were you able to hear the person with the megaphone? Another thing too that's really good to do is to play screams of animals on the megaphone. That can be really effective. Just practice it first to make sure it's loud enough and that it's clear. You can, that's a really good thing that we've done at most of ours. We use the pig screaming in the gas chamber because they scream and it's horrific sounding and it's really confronting, so we do that. So yeah, so what can you do when you're just grocery shopping? Because everyone's got a grocery shop. Another hint another tip is don't do disruptions at the grocery store that you regularly shop at because you don't want to get 86'd from your own store. That's just, that's just not a good thing. You don't want to not be allowed to shop at the store that's convenient for you and close to you, if that makes sense. Something that is actually my own idea that I came up with that I've been doing lately is I made these cardboard signs that hang on the edge of a shopping cart, and they just say messages on them, and I just cruise around with my shopping cart with these signs basically on each side of my shopping cart. One of them says, vegan food doesn't cause global pandemics, choose vegan alternatives, and the other one says, meat, fish, dairy, eggs, always cruel, watch Dominion.com, go vegan. And it's cool because you can cruise around with these signs and park the cart in front of a meat place or an egg place and just act like you're doing something else or literally go do something else. Just leave your cart in these places and go look for an item and come back. And while you're gone, I guarantee you people are going to be reading the sign and being what the hell? And then they're getting confronted with a message in a way that you don't have to even talk to them or, it's a great easy thing to do. And I just feel like everyone should be doing this. I just think it's a good idea. And in my experience, the staff workers don't care. They're not take those down. But even if they were, it's not the end of the world. Something that you can always do is if you're passing through, say, the dairy section, you're there to get your oat milk or your almond milk or whatever, and you see other people grabbing for the cow titty, raped cow, animal abuse, breast milk, you can just say, like, cows are abused in the dairy industry, they take babies away. Like, it doesn't even have to be long. You can just be like, dairy is animal cruelty, try a vegan milk today, or just whatever. You can just say, like, as you're passing by, like, the meat section, you can be like, animals do not want to die. You know, it can be just as simple as that. And people usually just look at you. And my boyfriend's good at doing this. I'm a little more shy about doing this, but it's a good thing to do. Again, we want to make it not normal. This normalized violence shouldn't be normal. It should be, like, confronted and frowned upon. So just any chance you get. And you can also do things like ask the workers where the cruelty-free milk is, instead of saying where the vegan or plant-based milk is, because then that forces them to think, like, cruelty-free milk, what is that? And then you're kind of forcing them to be like, oh, the plant-based milk is cruelty-free. That means the cow's milk, it has cruelty. Like, a lot of people just aren't thinking that way. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it can be a bit awkward, but just anywhere, basically, you're at a non-vegan restaurant, you're there to get the vegan options or whatever, you can be like, oh, what cruelty-free options do you have here? And it causes people to think, because then they have to, in their brain, be like, cruelty-free? There's cruelty in, like, some foods? Like, because, again, people just don't think. You just want them to think. Another thing you can do when you're at the register is just kind of talk to the cashier and be like, oh, have you ever tried this plant milk? It's really good. Yeah, I don't know why people are still paying for cow's milk in 2020, like, when they're taking babies away from the cows and when all dairy cows are being slaughtered. It's really cruel. It's, like, bad for the environment. It's not sustainable. There's so many plant milks. It's a wonder that people are still buying cow milk. And yeah, just act like it's so, like, abnormal to still be buying cow milk. And regardless of how they respond, sometimes they just ignore you and don't want to engage in that conversation. You've still, like, said something. You've still planted that seed. Another thing that you can do is put stickers on non-vegan food products. You can buy stickers online or make your own. We've done that before. Stickers can say, like, warning, eating meat causes cancer, heart disease, and erectile dysfunction. Those ones are fun to put on, like, meat packages. Or warning, this contains the chopped up body parts of someone who didn't want to die. Stickers that say, if you're against animal cruelty, why are you paying for it? Those are good to put on items that are basically falsely marketed as more humane, like cage-free eggs or humanely raised chicken or no antibiotics. Like, those kinds of stickers are good to put on there, because you gotta think that the consumer buying those, because they're more expensive, they're buying those because they care to some level or some degree about, like, animal welfare, and they feel, like, better about buying those because they kind of buy into the marketing lies that they're better for the animals, when in reality, of course, they're not. But if you put a sticker on there that's like, if you're against animal cruelty, why are you still buying it? It causes them to think, like, oh, this product is still cruel. There's Watch Dairy is Scary stickers that you can put on dairy. There's a lot of really good sticker ideas. And you can also just leave, like, little cards or pamphlets on the meat section with vegan information and stuff like that. So that's a really cool way that you don't even have to interact with any humans, and you can just be all chill and cool and sneaky and sneak those things on there. It's a lot of fun. I mean, it's not fun seeing, like, the dead bodies and stuff, but the act of putting the stickers and things on there is fun. Another thing you can do as a more, like, passive form is if you're shopping with someone else, like your partner or someone you live with or whatever who's also vegan, you can just have, like, extra loud conversations with each other and just be like, wow, I wonder why people are still buying cow's milk when, they take the babies away and they kill the male calves on their first day of life. And the other person can be like, I know, and it's so weird. There's vegan milk, and like, why are people still paying for animal cruelty? And just have like these loud conversations for people to overhear. That's another good way to do things. There's really just endless things that you can do with your literal voice that you don't even need to plan or bring anything into the store. You can just walk by the meat or the deli, whatever, where the people are in line waiting for their dead bodies and shit. You can just be like, wow, I didn't know people were still eating meat in 2020 when there's a cruelty-free meat and animals don't have to die anymore for you to have the same taste, textures, and flavors. Or like, wow, I didn't know people were still buying dead animals when dead animals caused this global pandemic we're currently in. Or like, it's crazy that people are still buying eggs. I mean, everyone knows like free range and organic doesn't mean anything, and all the egg-laying hens are still slaughtered and they're still miserable, and the male chicks are still ground up alive. Like, didn't know people were still buying them. Like, their menstrual cycles, they come out of the same hole that a chicken bleeds and shits out of. Like, oh, that's so weird. Can't believe people are still buying that, And people will hear these things, and maybe they'll still pick up the product. Maybe they'll pretend to ignore you, but I can guarantee you they hear you. Unless they've got headphones on or they don't hear, then they've heard you. There's just endless ideas. Like, you can go to a store. Like, one time my boyfriend and I, we went to a Natural Grocers on our road trip when we were in Colorado, and they had this big, giant, lovely, beautiful painting of a turkey on the store, and it was like humanely raised, blah, blah, blah bullshit. Of course, we know that that's a lie. And we were checking out, and we were like, yeah, it's really disappointing to see that sign on the outside of the store, like, humanely raised and free range. Like, do you know what free range actually is? And of course, this particular worker just ignored us and was just like, have a nice day. But, she still heard us. So, and you never know when you're going to talk to someone who's open-minded. I've had conversations in grocery stores with people who are open-minded that are like, oh, I didn't know that about this. And like, oh, really? And people, like, some people are open-minded. So you just never know when you're going to run into those kinds of people and basically be this conversation for them that could potentially fate and destiny change their life, and they can eventually become vegan even if they don't do it overnight. So yeah, there you go. I think that's about everything I have to say about grocery store disruptions and grocery store activism. And there's a bunch of videos on YouTube and online of grocery store disruptions. I highly recommend you go watch some. If you want to watch the ones that I did recently, I have a YouTube video on my channel, Alicia Demi. That's ALISIA space DEMI. It's my most recent video about, I think it's called Animal Rights People Storm Grocery Store, and it just goes through basically everything I've talked about. It shows us talking about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and getting together before we go in so that you can really see the whole process of what it all looks like, meeting, walking into the store, walking out, and all that, and then our thoughts afterwards. So I think it's a pretty good video, and of course there's a lot more. I know even Joey Carbstrong has done grocery store disruptions, and yeah, I don't know, I love disruptions. They're like one of my most favorite things to do because, I don't know, there's just something about confronting people with the truth and being kind of like courageous that really makes me feel fulfilled, and I think it's effective. So yeah, thanks for listening, and speak up for the animals today. Whether it's just sharing something on social media or challenging a non-vegan argument, it can be as small as that. Go out and speak out for the animals today. hope you have a good day too. So yeah, happy holidays. Yeah. Bye.